So, have you ever wondered why we're, well, kind of bad at predicting what will actually make us happy? Today, we're diving into exactly that, using the incredible work of Daniel Kahneman from his book Thinking Fast and Slow to figure out the huge gap between the happiness we think we're chasing and what we really experience.
All right, so just so you know, this is the 8th explainer in our 9-part series on this amazing book. If you've been with us, welcome back. And if you're just jumping in, you're in for a treat, because this one idea could honestly change the way you think about your life choices.
Okay, let's get personal for a second. I want you to think back to a really big decision you made, one where the main goal was just to be happier. Maybe you moved across the country for a new job, or maybe you bought that car you'd been dreaming about. Just get one of those moments clear in your head.
Now for the real question. Be honest. Did that amazing feeling, that initial buzz, last as long as you thought it would? For most of us, if we're really honest, the answer is probably not. And that difference, that gap between our forecast and reality, is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So, what's the first big reason for this disconnect? Well, it has a name: the focusing illusion. It's this sneaky little mental glitch where we put way too much importance on whatever single thing we happen to be thinking about at that moment. Let's see how it plays out. Kahneman gives us this perfect little thought experiment. Picture two groups of people, one living in sunny California and the other living in the Midwest. Now, if I ask you, who's happier? What's your gut reaction? Most people immediately say Californians. Why? Because we focus on the most obvious difference: the weather. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, when researchers actually go out and measure people's day-to-day moods, they find almost no difference at all. How can that be? Well, because while we're thinking about the weather, it seems like the most important thing in the world. But in reality, people in both places are dealing with the same daily grind: jobs, traffic, family, chores. The weather is just a tiny piece of that much bigger puzzle.
And this brings us to Kahneman's powerful summary of the whole idea. He said, "Nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you are thinking about it." It's a simple but absolutely profound trap that our brains lay for us all the time.
Okay, so that's the focusing illusion. But there's another huge piece of the puzzle, a kind of hidden superpower that we all have but constantly forget about: our incredible power of adaptation.
You know, there's actually a fancy psychological term for this. It's called an affective forecasting error. It sounds complicated, but it just means we are terrible fortune tellers when it comes to our own feelings. We always think the good times will make us happier for longer than they do, and the bad times will make us sadder for longer than they do. We're just wrong. A lot.
Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a huge life event, something amazing like winning the lottery, or something terrible like suffering a major injury. Right after it happens, there's this massive spike or dip in happiness, right? But what studies show is just remarkable. You check in 3 months later and then a year later, and people from both groups have started to drift back surprisingly close to where they were before it all happened. You see, the key takeaway here is that our emotional system is designed to neutralize things. It gets used to the new reality. That amazing new promotion just becomes your job. That dream house just becomes your house. It's sometimes called the hedonic treadmill, and it works for both the good and the bad. It's a force we almost never factor into our decisions.
So let's recap. We've got the focusing illusion, making us chase the wrong things, and we've got our own power of adaptation, making the finish line move. This all leads to Kahneman's biggest revelation on the topic. Maybe we're getting it wrong because there isn't just one kind of happiness. There are two.
Kahneman splits it like this. On one hand, you have your emotional well-being. This is your experiencing self. It's the part that answers the question, how do I feel right now? It's made up of all the little feelings: joy, stress, boredom, anger that fill your day. But on the other hand, you have life satisfaction. This is your remembering self. It's the one who steps back and asks, all things considered, how is my life going as a whole? Let's make this super concrete. Think about someone with a high-stress but very prestigious, high-paying job. When they step back and think about their career, their achievements, their status, they feel a deep sense of pride. That's high life satisfaction. But their actual moment-to-moment experience, their day, might be full of anxiety and frustration. That's low emotional well-being. You see? They're two completely different things.
Now let's apply this new 2-part framework to the big one: money. We've all heard the phrase, money can't buy happiness, but what Kahneman's research shows us is that the real answer is much more interesting. It all depends on which happiness you're trying to buy.
So, in a famous study, Kahneman and his colleague found a kind of magic number. In the US at the time, it was about $75,000 a year. Now, obviously, you have to adjust that for inflation and where you live, but the principle here is what's so powerful. This number acted as a sort of ceiling.
And this chart just lays it out so clearly. Take a look at the green bar, life satisfaction. As income goes up, it just keeps on climbing. More money makes people feel more successful and satisfied with their life story. But now, look at that blue bar, emotional well-being, our day-to-day happiness. It rises with income, but only up to that point of financial comfort. And then it completely flatlines.
And that is the punchline, right there. More money is very, very good at buying you life satisfaction. It solves problems, it reduces misery, it gives you a sense of security. But it is not very good at buying you a happier day, moment to moment, once your basic needs are met.
Okay, so where does this leave us? What do we actually do with this information? We've got this focusing illusion, our tendency to adapt, and now these two different kinds of happiness. It might seem complicated, but it's actually incredibly empowering.
What it really gives you is a much, much better map for navigating your life. When you're facing a big choice, instead of just asking that vague question, will this make me happy, you can ask much smarter questions. You can ask, is this choice likely to improve my day-to-day emotional well-being? Or is it more about boosting my long-term life satisfaction? Sometimes a choice does both, but very often you're making a trade-off between the two.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important question that I want to leave you with. Knowing you have these two selves, an experiencing self that lives in the present moment and a remembering self that tells the story of your life, which one are you prioritizing? Is a good life for you about having a great story to tell at the end, or is it about having as many happy, individual moments as possible along the way? There's no right answer, but just knowing you have a choice, well, that's the first real step to designing a life that's truly your own.